Hand over to you, and then you can take all the questions.
Yeah.
Okay, let me know when you're everyone's set.
Grab it. Do you mind if Lex stands on that
No,
side?
of course. Come in.
Chocolates. Stand on this side. Oh, got it.
Oh, they're heavy, are they?
And
No.
should we bring the bilby out as well?
The star. You're right.
Should we stand on this side because this is here?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Are we still waiting? Okay. Yeah, you can start eating them. You good now? Fantastic. Well, happy Easter. Good morning. We're coming to you today from Dreamworld on the Gold Coast. Easter's special for everyone for lots of different reasons, and for one of the reasons for me is it's a chance to support conservation of one of my favourite native Australian animals, the bilby. The Save the Bilby Fund, our Parks and Wildlife Service, the Queensland Government and Dreamworld have been working together to ensure the survival of the bilby, and it's really quite an incredible story. They fenced off 2,500 hectares to keep the feral animals out. They bred bilbies here at Dreamworld and elsewhere in Queensland and released them. Tragically though, in the 2011 floods, the fence was breached and the feral cats got in and destroyed the bilby population. Since then though, they've been working to rebuild it, rebuild the fence, rebuild the breeding program, re-release lots and lots more bilbies. It took a long time to get the cats out, and those last few were particularly hard to trap, but the bilbies are there now, and we estimate there are now 50,000 bilbies in Australba National Park. Am I allowed to talk about the bilbies that were outside the fence?
Yeah, you can get.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Our team on the ground also managed to find some bilbies outside the fence that were able to survive even despite being outside the fence and the feral animals throughout that period. The reason I want to mention them is because I like to call them invincibilbies. Do you like that? No. It's also great to see our tourism markets really taking off. I understand on booking.com the Gold Coast was the #1 searched holiday destination, followed by Cairns, Airlie Beach, Brisbane. So the whole state's tourism market is starting to pump back into action. I understand there was also some research released that more than 50% of Australians were planning to holiday over this Easter school holiday period, which is just fantastic news for our tourism operators. I know it's been a couple of really tough years for them, and so to see it coming back and coming back strongly is just so fantastic. I might ask Al to say a few things about the bilby.
Yeah, good morning. Firstly, I want to acknowledge the Queensland Government, Stephen Miles and everyone associated with the Department of Parks and Wildlife for the support they provide, the Save the Bilby Fund and bilbies in general across the state of Queensland. I also want to acknowledge Dreamworld and the support they've provided over many, many years to Save the Bilby Fund. From a Save the Bilby Fund perspective, how good is it? Easter chocolate bilbies from Darryl Lee Chocolates, from Pink Lady Chocolates, are now in supermarkets and stores across Queensland and Australia. And a percentage of those sales comes back to Save the Bilby Fund, so we can support this collaborative program with the Queensland Government, the many zoos and aquaria that support this as well, particularly here in Queensland at Currawinja National Park, Strebler and Diamantina areas. This is important. There's only a handful of these animals left across Queensland and other parts of Australia, and so we want to make sure that these animals do not go extinct on our watch. So any funds that we receive go directly into supporting the captive breeding programs, the time and effort out in the field to monitor these animals. This is important work that we don't lose another mammal species in Australia. And Queensland, with this collaboration, is leading the way. I just want to acknowledge everyone again, acknowledge the many Australians that are going to go out this Easter and purchase chocolates. Make sure it's Darryl Lee chocolate or Pink Lady chocolates where the money goes back to supporting us in the work we do in collaboration with these organisations. Make sure you've got a choice now, bunnies or bilbies. If you're a proud Australian, choose bilbies, 100%. Make sure you choose bilbies this Easter and hand them out and promote the fact that you're a proud Australian and you're choosing bilbies.
What will that money then actually go towards, like facilities or?
Yep, so we have a captive breeding program based out of Charleville in Parks and Wildlife Office. So we're supporting the Queensland Parks and Wildlife at that Charleville breeding animals to be released. There's another batch that are going to be released into Currawinga National Park. If you take a picture of the fence beside me here, that's the fence that was rebuilt to protect bilbies. And as our Deputy Premier mentioned, bilbies now have been discovered outside the fence. How cool is that? They've survived feral cats. That's the biggest threat to bilbies in the deserts of Australia. More than 20 million feral cats call Australia home. Just as much feral cats as what there is human population. And so we need everyone to get involved this Easter and support bilbies to make sure that this little iconic critter, this mystical, beautiful marsupial, does not go extinct on our watch.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Al. I think they'll... Other questions?
How exciting is it to have the cruise ban tomorrow? What does that mean for Queensland?
Oh, this is another milestone as we make our way out of the pandemic and into economic recovery. It's great news for Queensland. I think it'll take a while for things to ramp back up to anywhere near the levels we were used to, but I think it's a boost of confidence to the industry. It'll see people starting to return. We've got very good COVID-safe plans to make sure that cruising is as safe as it possibly can be, and I can't wait to see them come back in. I can't wait to see that new cruise terminal in Brisbane finally get some use.
How do you expect those ships to contain COVID outbreaks or still in some sort of another way?
Yeah, so there are very detailed COVID protocols, including vaccination requirements, pre-cruise testing requirements, as well as protocols, of course, on board. And so they've been worked out very closely in conjunction with the health advisors, the AHPPC, and I'm sure that will keep cruising safe.
When do you expect the first ship to come in?
Look, I'm not sure what the plans there are. They will take, as I say, some time for things to ramp back up. But I know lots of folk I know who love cruising. They've been waiting for this day for a long, long time, and so they'll be planning their cruise, and the cruise companies will be putting an offering out there too.
Minister, Labor Insider's describing the first week of the campaign as a shit show for you guys. How does Albanese bounce back from so many gaps and back clips?
Oh, look, I'm very confident he can bounce back. I think when it comes to election day, people are going to look at the way Scott Morrison has performed over the last 3 years. They're not going to be thinking about whether Albo forgot a number on the first day of the campaign. And so I think particularly when it comes for Queenslanders, and obviously I know Queenslanders are better than voters in other states, but I think Queenslanders have a really clear memory of the last few months and the last few years, and they'll be voting to get rid of Scott Morrison.
How's the mood within Queensland Labor at the moment, given what's happening in the first week?
Look, it's early in the campaign and there's a long way to go. We're really just reaching the point now that a normal length campaign would start, and so there's plenty of time for us to be out there talking to voters about what Labor's plans are for the country's future. And as I say, the Queenslanders I talk to, they've made up their mind about Scott Morrison. Of course, now it's Labor's job to convince them to vote for us.
Do you think Federal Labor should review the jobs JobKeeper rate?
Look, that's a matter for them, and I'm not going to get into the details of those federal policies. But I'm very confident that when it comes, by the time it comes to election day, people will be able to put the policies of the two parties next to each other and make a really clear decision.
Just on the topic of health, your government announced a $2 billion hospital fund a year ago. But only 17% of that money was allocated in the last budget. When will the health system see that rest of that money?
Yeah, so that fund was really important. I know from my time as Health Minister, it's very hard to plan long-term hospital projects without having a long-term funding envelope. And so the commitment that we made in the budget last year for that $2 billion hospital fund, some of that was allocated initially, but the rest of it is there so that the health system can be sure that they have funds there available to draw down as they reach their planning milestones for those other hospital projects. They've funded a whole range of business cases in there. I think there's planning funding included for the Northern Gold Coast hospital in there, relevant to folk here around Dreamworld, as well as the foundational buildings for places like Toowoomba.
And the AMA and the nurses union say money needs to be fast-tracked because the system is overwhelmed. Why wasn't more of the hospital fund allocated?
As I say, the fund was about getting those funds there and available so that hospitals and health services could then plan forward in a way that was difficult to do if they couldn't be certain of the capital allocation. And so now that those funds are there, the health services have been planning those new facilities, and we want to see that spent as fast as is possible, but in the way that will help the system the most. And so that's why the planning and the getting it right is so important. These facilities, they serve the community for often 30, 40, 50 years. So you've got to get the location right, the shape of the building right, the service mix right, and that's exactly what the health services are doing.
Minister, will you be campaigning alongside Anthony Albanese in the campaign?
Certainly I'll be supporting my local candidates in particular. My electorate sits across three important seats, Dixon, Longman and Petrie, and we have great candidates there. If I'm called on to help elsewhere, I'll certainly be happy to. You know, I'm sick and tired of how Queensland has been treated by this current government, and I want to see a new one.
Because of how many health workers are isolating because of COVID, when will we see changes to the close contact rules?
Yeah, like every workplace, Queensland Health and the Queensland Ambulance Service is affected by both the isolation requirements for those who have tested positive and those who are household contacts of those who have tested positive. The last update I had, that was more than 3,000 health staff. That's very significant in terms of its impact on the health system. The AHPPC, that's that committee of all of the chief health officers, continue to discuss this. It continues to be their advice that isolation requirement is helping to suppress the rate of transmission, therefore reducing the impact on our hospitals. We do have more than 500 the last update I saw, we had more than 500 inpatients. That's the size of one of our medium-sized hospitals, so it's having a significant impact. If we were to reduce those isolation requirements, we would expect to see more people in hospital, increasing the effect. So that's what the medical advisors have to do. They have to balance out the number of cases, knowing full well what proportion of those cases will ultimately need hospital care, against the other impacts of those policies.
Minister, Premier down in Byron Bay, should she not be holidaying in Queensland over Easter?
The Premier, as I understand, is staying on the Gold Coast and driving down to Bluesfest. I'm a bit jealous. I'd love to be there too. But I think everyone agrees that after the last couple of years, she's earned a break. This is the first proper break she's really had that entire time. I'm just quite pleased that I haven't had to call her back, having had to do that a couple of times now. I think Queenslanders will be happy to see her get a decent break and staying down here on the Goldie.
And just one more on integrity. Emails released under the RTI show the Public Service Commission was accused of unlawfully deleting sensitive emails. This was 2 years before it allegedly seized a laptop from the Office of the Integrity Commissioner. How can Queenslanders have any confidence in the integrity of the Public Service Commission?
Look, all of these matters, including the emails that you've referred to, were looked at by the CCC, and the CCC found that those accusations were baseless. And so these matters have been dealt with over many, many years. The CCC has looked at them in detail and extensively, and I think the public has confidence in those oversight systems, can have confidence in those oversight systems, that they've looked at everything here. In fact, the fact that these emails have now been released and available demonstrates how that they were recovered and were available for investigators.
There's been like major issues at Queensland airports recently, and was that a bit concerning considering this weekend, you know, a lot of people are relying on this for their tourism recovery?
Yeah, I don't know too much about that other than what I've seen reported, but I imagine ramping back up in the way that our airlines, our airports have had to do after laying off so many people for so long, getting people back in, training them back into systems, often new systems that have had to be adjusted because of COVID. That's obviously putting some pressure on them. I guess the message is if you're going away, just make sure you leave plenty of time for your travel.
All right, should we get a little bit into the shade?
Yeah.
Yeah.